It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. In an era of chaos, confusion, and craziness, Ferenc is a voice for common sense. As a financial literacy educator, speaker, and entrepreneur, Ferenc cuts through the noise to help us understand how current events affect our money, economy, and our freedom. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Email Ferenc, F-E-R-E-N-C, no E on the end, F-E-R-E-N-C at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. Yes, you will reach me. Well, wow, a lot can change in just a week. If you heard my show last week, I was pretty fired up. The gist of the show is really the conditions that I felt were being put into place that could lead to the next civil war. I wasn't being hyperbolic. I really truly felt that way. And it was really based on the presence of Americans being disenfranchised in their representation. You have to remember the beginnings of our country were started by no taxation without representation. The modern version of that has taken a number of different approaches, one of them being gerrymandering. And I was referring to the state of Virginia, where they recently pushed through a referendum that was going to change the representation of the districts in Virginia from 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans to 10-1 Democrat to Republican. And why it was so egregious is literally just a few months ago, Virginia had a Republican governor, a very popular one, by the way. In the past presidential election, Kamala Harris won Virginia by about 5 or 6%. It's the definition of a purple state. And primarily the reason why it's a purple state is Northern Virginia, which is suburbs of D.C., has so many government-associated folks that live there, employees, NGOs, people that live on the government dime that typically overwhelmingly vote in favor of more government because that's where their bread is buttered. That's how they get paid. If you look at the rest of the state, it's nearly all very conservative, very red. The ballot initiative passed barely by less than 1%. So in effect, 51% were disenfranchising 49% of the voters in the state of Virginia. And that was very, very unfair. Now, yes, gerrymandering does occur with both parties. No reasonable person can look at the efforts the Democrats do with gerrymandering. They're just far better at it and far more aggressive. Perfect example is the 6 New England states average about 42% Republican voting record year in and year out. Yet out of the 38, I believe it is, House representative seats from New England, there are 0 Republicans. And it's all because of gerrymandering. New Mexico averages 45% Republican vote, typically, has 0 Republican representatives. So when you take a state that's so closely divided, like Virginia, and you shift or push the gerrymandering to the point where there is a huge disenfranchisement of most of the state, it's a very unfair thing. And to make matters worse, many constitutional rules, the state of Virginia Constitution, were broken. Many in Virginia, I have many clients there who were very upset because the current governor ran as a moderate and then immediately turned and started being very aggressive in increasing taxes, reducing gun rights, pushing through this redistricting measure. So they felt lied to or misled. It's not uncommon in politics, but you could see the writing on the wall if you were paying attention, frankly. And my point was simple is if you're going to disenfranchise people this dramatically, this aggressively, there's going to be a lot of anger built up, a lot of frustration. And if this continues far enough, it's going to lead to very, very bad things. Well, in 1 week, we've seen a tremendous turnaround because the Virginia Supreme Court officially denied the Democrats' attempt to reinstate the 10-1 Democrat-Republican congressional map. This is a huge win for half of the state. It's a huge win in the fact that Half the voters of the state will not be disenfranchised. They still will have representatives in Congress representing them, hopefully. If you looked at some of the maps that had been drawn, they were absolutely ridiculous. There's a town called Stanton, Virginia, which is in the Shenandoah Valley, a beautiful place. I was there last year, in fact. It's very far away from Washington, D.C. It's a different world. It's a very beautiful, rural type of community. And their district snaked all the way up into D.C. It looked like a snake. And they did this with like 5 of the districts. So these people in Stanton, Virginia, very rural area, small town America, would have been represented by somebody who lived in the suburbs of D.C., frankly, someone they had nothing in common with. So I'm very glad to see that Virginia Supreme Court has denied this effort on constitutional grounds. Many rules were broken. That is a fact. This wasn't pulled out of their hat. This was all done on solid legal standing. The Democrats in Virginia overstretched, frankly. And what's ironic about this is because of this strong effort from Virginia, it's gotten a lot of attention from a lot of people across the country. Even myself, I understood that gerrymandering happened with both parties. And I understood that the Democrats had done it more aggressively over the last few decades even. But when I started looking into it and found out that, again, the 6 states in New England, 42% Republican, yet they have 0 House seats, 0 representatives. Even I, who kind of pay attention to this stuff, had no idea how aggressive the Democrats had been in their gerrymandering efforts. If you look at the new California map, it's absolute joke. Only 4 districts in California are majority Republican. Yet well over 40% of the state are registered Republicans and vote that way. Again, they did the same type of trick. They snake these districts. They look like long, skinny snakes that snake into these highly dense, highly populated, Democrat-dominant cities, and they stretch them out into the rural areas, which is highly unfair. Those folks that live out in those areas do not get representation from somebody that relates to them. So the good news is we avoided a crisis, I believe, and I'm happy about that. But to put things even more perspective, what's interesting is when you have a reaction, it's basic physics, you typically have a opposite and equal or sometimes even greater reaction. And what is that reaction? Well, the Democrats had put forth that they were doing the efforts in Virginia because, as they quote, on the ballot initiative to restore fairness. What were they referring to? The redistricting efforts that had occurred previously in Texas, where they added 4 or 5 likely Republican seats. Now, Texas had a valid reason to do redistricting. Millions of people literally have moved into Texas since the last census. So there's a reason to redistrict in Texas. That was not true in Virginia. But now, Florida is now stepping up and doing a redistricting. Just like Texas, they've had millions of people move into Florida since the last census, and it makes sense to redistrict. And it appears they're going to add 4 to 5 potentially new Republican House seats, which would have totally nullified the Virginia effort. But by overstretching, overreaching, the Democrats did in this case with Virginia, not only have they lost that battle in the Virginia Supreme Court, they did not pick up the extra 4 seats they were hoping to do so in Virginia, but that's now motivated and activated Florida to add 4 to 5 more seats. So that's literally 8 to 10 seat swing right there with those 2 states in the House of Representatives. The Texas map has already been approved by their Supreme Court, so nothing's happening there. And I'm not 100% certain. I'll have to check on this. Maybe I'll know more next week whether the California redistricting map is going to stand. It's still up in the air, I believe. The bottom line is the net result of all this looks like that the Republicans are likely going to pick up at least 10, maybe more seats as a result of these redistricting efforts. The Republicans currently only hold a few seat majority, so 10 seat swing is a massive swing Because again, if one party gains 10 seats, the other loses 10. So that's like a 20-seat swing in the favor of the Republicans. Now, depending on your political persuasion, this could be really, really good news or really bad news. I'm happy about it because for decades now, the Democrats have aggressively used gerrymandering to freeze out the Republicans in places like New England, New Mexico, and some others. For the most part, the Republicans have not fought back very much, and I'm really glad to see them finally stepping up and fighting fire with fire. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And what is a bit short-sighted, I believe, on the Democrats' part is the Republicans, because they had not been so aggressive with redistricting. Illinois is another example. Terrible. You look at the district maps, they're ridiculous. Long, skinny snakes that go way into rural areas of Illinois, and they all snake up into Chicago to give a massive majority for Illinois to Democrats. The Democrats don't have as many states, for one, to work with gerrymandering, and they've been far more aggressive with it. So if both parties decided to apply somewhat equal gerrymandering efforts, the Republicans have a huge advantage. I think the bottom line is the Democrats got overconfident. The Republicans have not fought back on these kinds of things very much for decades, literally, and they thought they just got used to getting away with it. I mean, it's totally egregious that there's not a single Republican representative representing any of the states in New England. I can tell you, we spent some time up in Maine last summer. Beautiful place, beautiful coast, really nice people. But if you get into upstate Maine, it's very rural. It's one of the most rural areas in the country. Those are very conservative people. There's a lot of homesteaders up there who are anti-government even, yet they have Democrat House representatives because of gerrymandering. How is that fair? It's just not. Some are now calling for disarming this battle of gerrymandering. I don't think it's going to stop. I think the Democrats were, again, as I said, for decades benefiting from this. Republicans did not respond that aggressively, but now are waking up and doing so. And this just might be quite the death knell, especially when it comes to the House of Representatives for the Democratic Party. And based on the policies that even pretty mainstream Democrats are pursuing these days, look, Republicans, they've got plenty of problems, particularly with the rhinos. I've complained about them many times on this show even. But folks, the Democrats have really they've gone to the deep end on a lot of things with trans rights and open borders. It's crazy. When our country just can't sustain more of that. We need a reprieve from that for a while. And I was really, really getting concerned about the midterms, about Democrats regaining control. And it looks far less likely that's going to happen. Stay tuned in the next segment. I've got another big news from the U.S. Supreme Court that will likely push this House of Representatives advantage towards Republicans even farther. Stay tuned.
I'm Ference Toth, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. This is the golden era of fixed assets. Annuities and guaranteed lifetime income are paying the best rates in over 40 years. If you looked at annuities over 2 years ago, the numbers have increased significantly. If you own an annuity over 2 years old, the new products can not only pay your penalty to switch, but are often guaranteed to outperform your current product. For more info, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Email Ference, F-E-R-E-N-C, no E on the end, F-E-R-E-N-C at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. Yes, you will reach me. There's another bit of huge news from the U.S. Supreme Court that likely, frankly, is doomsday when it comes to Democratic representation in the House of Representatives. What has happened for a number of decades now is that many House districts, especially in the South, have been drawn based on race. Now, this is something, again, even though I'm fairly on top of political matters, I'm not a total political junkie. I live my life too, like I'm sure many of you do. But when I dove into this further, I was absolutely shocked by how egregious many of these House districts are based on race. See, I was under the impression that racism was illegal. There was not supposed to be benefits or disadvantages to anyone based on their skin color. We have a Civil Rights Act even. This is really illegal. It's immoral. It's redlining. This was done way back in the days. If you go back, there was a period of time where blacks in particular could not purchase homes. Banks wouldn't loan money to them to purchase homes in certain neighborhoods. That was wrong. Well, this is equally as wrong. Drawing a congressional district based on skin color is against the law, and the U.S. Supreme Court has now struck that down. Why is this such a big deal? One, like I stated earlier, it's morally correct and really follows the Civil Rights Act and the laws of our country. But two, and the Supreme Court has agreed, this is an unconstitutional practice. But it turns out that about 27 Democratic House seats are represented by these districts. This could potentially swing 27 more seats to the Republicans in the House of Representatives. This is on top of the 10 or 12 seats that Republicans are likely going to gain due to gerrymandering efforts in Texas, Florida, the denial by the Virginia Supreme Court of redistricting their states. This is a massive victory for the Republicans. There was a lot of discussion that the midterms were going to be really tough, but it now looks like that with gerrymandering and this U.S. Supreme Court decision, this could flip the House from Republicans of around 2 or 3 seat majority to 30 or even 40 seat majority. This could be a generational shift when it comes to the House of Representatives. If we could get some continuity in our government instead of swinging back and forth, this would help our economy. It would help our country. Many of the policies that have been put in place by the current administration could then continue, like sealing the border, deporting illegals, minimizing legal immigration through HB1 visas, for example, going after fraud. Here's another exciting thing. In Minnesota, the FBI has now raided 22 of the daycare centers, including the infamous Leering Center Nick Shirley's video highlighted. These are fraudulent operations, stealing millions and millions of taxpayer dollars. This is a good sign. This is encouraging. No one should be in favor of fraud. Unfortunately, there are places in our country where fraud has been rampant, and everyone agrees that California leads this. These fraud investigations are ramping up with the FBI and other agencies to knock this down. If you're a person who receives Social Security or plan to at some point in the future, you should be in favor of these fraud efforts, eliminating fraud. Because with Social Security, Medicare, and other benefits going out, it just makes those programs weaker for their recipients. I've even shared on the show, I've even previously interviewed former Social Security trustees. And the argument was, be careful, Social Security, Medicare are going to run out of money in the next decade or less. The Social Security trustees report each year were stating that very fact. Well, as more and more fraud is uncovered, it's more and more looking like the reasons that these programs were going to run out of money was not because there wasn't enough money being collected, massive levels of fraud. money going overseas, money going to people in jail, dead folks, you name it. Folks that are over 100 years old, 120 plus. Just crazy, outrageous, outlandish fraud. And much of the economic and our housing crisis, our education crisis, overcrowded schools, hospitals, roads, our auto insurance rates going up, is because things like 43% of all food stamps are given to illegals. 95% of warrants issued for murder in Los Angeles are for illegals. And the argument we hear all the time, well, who's going to pick the crops? It turns out less than 2% of all illegals pick crops, but yet 41% are on welfare. Over 2/3 of all births in California are to illegals on Medi-Cal. So they have the records. 60% of all HUD occupied properties in the U.S. are illegal. This is according to U.S. government statistics. 39% of California students are illegals, and 75% of Los Angeles' most wanted criminals are illegals. 50% of all gang members in the United States happen to be illegals, and U.S. taxpayers are footing the bill for all of this. By the way, what would happen if we got rid of half of the gang members in this country? Crime would drop dramatically. Statistics show that about the vast majority of people do not commit crimes. 80+% of crimes are committed by a very small percentage, like 1 or 2%. So if you can get them out of your country, you can reduce crime by 70, 80% even. The FBI has proven that recently. And here's some more insanity for you. In 2005, the state of Massachusetts, 3% were on SNAP or food stamps. Now it's 16%. 1 in 6 people in the state of Massachusetts are currently receiving food stamps. Recently, J.D. Vance's task force to eliminate fraud uncovered out of 14,000 individuals receiving SNAP benefits in Massachusetts were driving luxury vehicles. Over 2,000 Teslas, 300 Land Rovers, over 200 Alfa Romeos, over 100 Porsches, over 50 Maseratis, 11 Lamborghinis, 3 Ferraris, and 3 Bentleys. These are people receiving food stamps. If you own a Bentley or a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, I don't think we, the taxpayers, need to be paying for your food. That is out and out fraud. This is all just in one state, and a recent survey that Vice President Vance's task force has uncovered. Now, on the good news, they've already now announced that over 4 million people in the U.S. have been kicked off of the food stamp program, just literally from fraud. These are people that should have never been on it in the first place. This is good news. And I saw this statistic, and I thought this was really eye-opening. Majority of the U.S. federal budget goes to social welfare programs. Do you know that if the government eliminated every budget item except for military and payments to interest, and they sent payments to every U.S. citizen earning under $200K a year, instead of paying taxes, each citizen would receive about $17,000 per year? A family of 4 would receive $68,000 a year from the government if your income was below $200,000. See, the problem isn't the millionaires and billionaires. It's the government spending way too much money and way too much fraud. And I saw this post from this lady who I thought this was really eye-opening. She stated, "I've always been a huge supporter of legal immigration." And she stated, "That's because I imagined the numbers of those entering America were very low. I thought they were bringing in a few thousand families a year who were already set up with jobs and self-sustaining." And she thought, why wouldn't we want hardworking folks come and chase the American dream? But as she's learned more about this, and I've been hammering this point home, educating people, as Thomas Jefferson stated, democracy is wholly unsuitable for anything other than an educated electorate. The only solution is educating the masses. That's how we maintain freedom. So she started looking into this further, verifying legal immigration statistics. In her state of North Carolina alone, American taxpayers spent over $5 billion to sustain legal immigrants. That's not a handful of families. 10% of North Carolina is now foreign born. And she pointed out, I had no clue. She's trying to teach people North Carolina's history. She's a teacher, apparently, schooling them on the language, traditions, way of life. And meanwhile, the federal government's doing everything it can to ensure those who have zero ties to this place outnumber those who do. And at the same time, veterans suffer with inadequate care. Many elderly have to work many more years than they should. We have homeless roaming the streets, and we're spending billions on legal immigrants. This just makes no sense. We're seeing this in the job market. And this is where some of my concerns I'm going to share in the next segment about the economy are going to, I believe, start rearing their ugly head. This is a CS professor at a top-tier state school sharing what some of their recent faculty meetings look like. Their placement rates in the last 18 months have dropped from 94% to 23%. Corporate partners have stopped returning calls. This professor has been there for 12 years, and they watched many students get recruited straight into $180K starting salaries, and that's nearly all gone away. He stated the university won't tell parents that their $200,000 computer science degree is training their kids to be prompt engineers at $65K a year if they're lucky. This is why the college student, even STEM field unemployment rates have been rising dramatically. And it's all due to too much legal immigration and a lot of fraud in that too. I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to share some solutions, some concerns, some solutions about what I see happening with the economy. I think you'll find it very educational and very beneficial. So I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned.
This is Ferentz, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. Your Personal Bank is a financial concept that allows you to grow your money insured with guarantees, income tax-free, and highly liquid. Also, you have the potential to continue to earn interest on money you invest in other assets, purchase items, or pay expenses. How can you do this? First, invest in a high cash value policy to earn dividends. If you leave money in the policy, it'll grow like any investment, insured with guarantees and tax-free. Second, we establish a bank line of credit using the cash in the policy as collateral. When you access funds, you receive them from the bank. Typically, dividends earned are higher than the interest charged by the bank. You keep the difference. This is known as positive arbitrage. If you want to earn interest on money you spent or invest elsewhere, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422 for more info. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferentz Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferentz at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferentz Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferentz. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. Email Ferentz, F-E-R-E-N-C, no E on the end, Ferentz at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. Yes, again, you will reach me. This legal immigration situation is getting out of hand. A good example is FedEx recently won a $2.2 billion federal contract, which is funded by taxpayers, and then promptly fired 12,000 Americans and hired HB1s to replace them. This should not be allowed. If we're going to pay for a contract as U.S. taxpayers, we should insist it goes to U.S. citizens in terms of jobs. Here's the part that many don't realize. If someone gets an HB1 visa, they also then get an H4 visa for their spouse. And then every baby whose family had been living in the U.S. becomes citizens. So their children become U.S. citizens. H-1B visas were never designed to be permanent. They're temporary, supposedly specialized employment. Yet most of these visa holders never sent back to their native countries. And there's really nothing specialized about IT anymore. It's not like it was 10 or 20 years ago. And today there's over 350,000 more Indians in the U.S. on student visas right now, which means as they transition to H-1B and then get married, double that number. And then start having children, it just keeps adding up. And there was a post that went viral. It was a visual, and if you haven't seen this, it's unreal. And it's basically titled H-1B Visa Workers in the United States. And it shows in a graphic form the dots of where all these HB1 visa people have been imported into our country over the past 10 years. Nearly 7 million H-1B visas have been approved in the United States over the past 10 years. And every one of those, roughly 7 million jobs, are jobs that did not go to a U.S. citizen. But it's not just the H-1B visa that's the problem. There are 6 major pathways to legally enter the U.S. on a visa or become a permanent resident green card holder with a path to citizenship. You've got family-based visas, spouses, kids, parents, siblings. So again, one HB1 can lead to an entire family. Employment-based visas, diversity visa lottery, K-1 fiancé visas, special immigration visas, dual intent work visas. And although the Trump administration has done a lot to reduce the H-1B visas, here's the problem. In the past 15 months since Trump took office, 600,000 illegal immigrants formally were deported. There were 600,000 new permanent green card entries, which means a net immigration change of 0. They're just replacing the illegal immigration, which was really bad. That's good that that was done. But they're not reducing the numbers. It's just happening legally now. Workers are getting replaced legally. Now, I'm a capitalist. I'm all for the free markets. I'm a small business owner for now over 30 years. I've owned multiple businesses. I've owned this agency, this financial agency, for over 21 years. I'm all about free enterprise and capitalism. But this is skewed. This is creating an unfair disadvantage to people who want to try to pursue the American dream, get a degree, get a job, make something of themselves, yet have to compete against the entire world for people who are willing to work for far less, because frankly, in most cases, what they're going to receive here is much more than they would have back home. The companies prefer it because they have more control over those employees, because oftentimes their visa, their ability to stay in the country is based on their job. So they're going to be less likely to challenge the direction of a company may be going, even if it's in a negative direction. This is happening to a detriment to our country. It's hollowing out our workforce, our employment, especially with younger people, and a lot of like the better paying STEM jobs, things like that. This will have a massive detrimental effect to our economy, because many of these foreign-born workers send a lot of the funds they receive back home to their families. They don't spend as much here. They're not consumers as much here. And oftentimes they don't assimilate. They're not part of the culture. Gosh darn it, we deserve a country just like everyone else. Japan doesn't allow foreign-born workers to come into their country. Neither do most countries of the world. Japan is for the Japanese. Why cannot the U.S. be for Americans? Why can't America be for Americans? Why are Japanese any better than us? They're not. We deserve the same rights they have. And the other dirty little secret about this is first world country extracts resources for a poorer country. Many people scream and yell that they're taking advantage. We're taking advantage of that country. Rich and powerful country is taking advantage of the poorer country. But those same people that scream and yell about that don't seem to have a problem with mining the intellectual capital of the country. In other words, instead of bringing all of the more ambitious people in that country, sure, we want the absolute top cream of the crop, of course. But that's a very, very small number. But a lot of these other people, if they have the ambition to go through the process and come here, why not stay in their country and make their country better? The intellectual capital of their country would improve. And many leaders in those countries lament the fact that many of their best people leave routinely, which makes it difficult for them to improve their countries. And they're right. India should be for Indians. It's not racist to say that, just like Japanese should be for Japanese people. And you want one more little thing? Keep talking about minorities. You know what ethnicity is actually a minority in the world? The largest ethnicity in the world happens to be Asian, over 25% of the world's population. And the next largest happen to be Africans. Only about 8% of the world's population is Caucasian. Nobody complains about Africa wanting to stay African, or India wanting to stay Indian, or Japan wanting to stay Japanese. There's no reason why we cannot be proud of our country too, and our culture and our heritage. In fact, we got a lot to be proud of. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon has just sued Cloudera for discriminating against U.S. workers in favor of foreign visa holders for high-paying tech jobs. It's a violation of the Immigration and Nationality Act and civil rights, and they'll not hesitate to sue employers for discriminating against U.S. workers. This is a good step in the right direction. We've got to stop this flood of people coming into our country and not giving our younger generation a fair shot. And the last thing I'll say about this, because this employment thing is big, this is huge for the future of our economy. The unemployment rate that we see the government statistics puts out only measures people who are looking for a job in the last 4 weeks. If somebody stops looking for a job after 4 weeks, they fall off the wagon, the government stops counting them. And how many millions of people do we have in this country that would be willing to work for a fair wage if they were just given a shot? Many of you are listening, your kids, your grandkids. I've got a 20 and 22-year-old daughters. And the opportunities for them out there in this world, working-wise, are quite limited. I'm thankful they've kind of followed in Dad's footsteps. They want to be entrepreneurs. And I think they'll have a bright future as a result of that. But if you're not entrepreneurial, and many people are not, what are they supposed to do? Why should they be forced to compete against millions and millions of foreign workers every year with advantages of lower pay, willing to take lower pay, more control by the companies? Oh, and by the way, to skew things further, again, it's not capitalism, it's not free enterprise when the government puts its thumb on the scale. Many of these work visas don't require the companies to pay payroll tax. So it's a further advantage to the company. By the way, that also hurts Social Security, folks, because guess where a majority of the money for Social Security benefits come from? From people the current workers contributing to payroll tax. That's how the Social Security recipients are receiving the majority of their benefits. You keep depressing that, your Social Security benefits are going to eventually get hit. So whether you're a young person looking for a job or trying to make a living, or you're a retiree and you're living off Social Security, you want to continue to receive that, you should be against foreign legal immigration to an extreme level that we're seeing record levels, negatively impacting the labor market, weakening the labor market, driving wages down. And there's even some discussion with many CEOs where they're starting to see real concerns that they are making these products and fewer people can afford the products they're making because even their own employees are getting to the point where they can't afford it. If we continue down this same path, one of my major concerns is the weakening labor markets, which will weaken the consumer market, which will affect asset prices, the stock markets, etc. And the government is putting its thumb on the scale to the detriment to the citizen. What is the primary purpose of government? It's to benefit its citizens. And when it stops benefiting its citizens, it needs to be changed. As we continue to educate people, they're waking up. If we continue to keep pushing, results will happen. And we've seen a lot of great results just in this last week. I'm sure you've noticed I'm a heck of a lot more upbeat this week than I was last week. I was gravely concerned last week where things were going. Thomas Sowell stated the endlessly repeated argument that most Americans are the descendants of immigrants ignores the fact that most Americans are not descendants of illegal immigrants. Stay tuned in the last segment. I got a few thoughts with some client meetings I had today that I think you'll find quite educational.
This is Ference, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. My show focuses on creating tax-free buckets of money, insured, guaranteed, highly liquid, and the ability to create positive arbitrage. Did you know this is the best time in over 40 years to invest in index annuities? An index annuity allows you to 1. Grow your money safely without market risk. Once gains are locked in, they're guaranteed against future market loss. 2. Double-digit potential upside on good market years with no losses in bad years. Principal is guaranteed. 3. A 7 to 8% fixed interest option is available in the first year. If you're interested in growing your money with potential index-related gains without downside market risk, this is the best time in over 40 years to consider an annuity. If your annuity is over 2 years old, the newer products likely have far superior potential returns. Please contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422 for more info. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferenc Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Email Ferenc, F-E-R-E-N-C, no E on the end, F-E-R-E-N-C at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. Yes, you will reach me. I had a really interesting meeting with a listener, been listening to the show. As he stated, looking at my financial situation, I'm concerned about running out of money in retirement. What also made this meeting quite interesting is some years ago, he had spent about a year as a financial advisor. He had tried his hand at that. He had learned a lot, as he stated, but it hadn't panned out for him as a career. But he had learned a lot about the financial world, investment world. But much of what I was sharing with him was new information he had not learned, even though being in the career path for over a year. And as I pointed out to him, a lot of people don't realize there are different specialties in the financial world, just like there's different specialties in almost any other career path. One of the most obvious ones most people are familiar with happen to be physicians, doctors. Most people understand that you have a general practitioner, MD. You also have surgeons, various specialists. And doctors very much segregate themselves to their specialty. You're not going to see an MD do brain surgery, for example, because, well, one, their insurance wouldn't allow it, and there's a lot of liability for them. So keep it very clear and distinct. The legal profession does also, to a lesser extent. Many attorneys will specialize in certain areas of law. In fact, this is a good advice. If you ever reach out to an attorney for any reason, one of the best questions you can ask is, what's your specialty? Because you'll get some that'll try to kind of say, well, they do everything. Jack of all trades, a master of none. If somebody's looking for the next NVIDIA, I'm not your guy. But if you are looking to maximize returns consistently, reduce market risk, eliminate the downside, there's a very common fallacy out there about if you want guarantees, you have to give up strong returns. That is completely and totally untrue. You're not in the wrong product. It's not the product's fault. You're just in the wrong indexes. And the analogy that I use all the time of if you want to win a horse race, you need a fast horse and a good jockey. If you're in a slow horse, if you're in a plow horse, you're not winning any races. About 80% of indexes that are out there are poor performers, subpar, low single digits. And this is where the somewhat justified perception of index products, and particularly index annuities, come from, because so many people are just stuck in these poor performers. And when I share this with prospective clients and such, they'll almost invariably ask me, why was I recommended to be in this? The most honest answer is the agent advisor you worked with probably didn't know any better. They're probably going by with what they were taught, what a marketing person told them, maybe a senior person or their manager, particularly if they're less experienced. The vast majority are not independent. Something like 90% of agents and advisors work with a certain group, so they can only offer those products. So they may or may not have the best product available in the marketplace. Now, they may believe they have the best product because, well, that's what they were told or taught or trained, but they may or may not. And then secondly, extraordinarily few have access to index performance reports, 1, 5, 10-year reports that show the actual returns. This is proprietary information, and I get asked this quite often by prospective clients. Why don't more agents and advisors have access to this? Because it's not public record. It's not easy to obtain. And as I shared with them, the particular group I work with created this themselves. It's proprietary. It's a carrot that they use to get agents and advisors to work with them. So they don't want it out to everyone, that this is one of their distinguishing factors. And not anyone can work with them. They look for only very experienced agents and advisors who've been in the industry for quite a while and done a lot of business, because they're not looking for the rookies, if you know what I'm trying to say. But I also shared with this gentleman a white paper that was done by JP Morgan recently. And I I did discuss this a couple of months ago on the show, but I went into it a little further with this gentleman because he had the experience of being a financial advisor for a year or so. The title of this white paper was Annuities Improve Outcomes from JP Morgan. My specialty is fixed assets, maximize growth, minimize risk. I'm not looking for the next NVIDIA. Wall Street, that's their strength. Their strength is to put assets at risk. There is some risk involved. There's varying levels of risk involved, and grow your nest egg. Most Wall Street agents, advisors, their strong suit is not protecting the downside, minimizing market risk, maximizing income for retirement. In fact, I see this all the time. One of the most difficult transitions people make from working and accumulating assets to then retiring, going into their distribution phase or living off the income, that's a difficult transition for many people. And oftentimes they're talking to the same person or type of advisor that they were in growing their nest egg. And that's typically not their strength. I know they say they'll do it, many of them, but to be frank, it's not their forte. It's not their focus. It's not their products. It's not their training. That is my strength. That is my forte. If you want to maximize growth, eliminate downside market risk, that's what I do. If you want to maximize income for retirement, that's what I do. Well, this white paper from JP Morgan, Annuities Improve Outcomes, is tremendously shocking because, again, it's from my competitor saying, hey, this works. And what they did is they took the likelihood of success of not running out of money in retirement. Most of you have heard about the 4% withdrawal rule. When you retire, if you take 4% of your portfolio as retirement income, you have a very high likelihood of success of not running out of money in retirement. The likelihood of success ranges from about 85 to 95%. Interesting on this chart, it also shows if you increase your withdrawal rate to 5%, your likelihood of success drops quite dramatically to like 2/3 to maybe even up to 75% likelihood of success, which means you have like a 1/3 to 25% likelihood of failure. And if you increase your withdrawal rate to 6%, your likelihood of success drops below half, no matter what your portfolio is. It's a dramatic drop. This is the basis they were using on, and they reviewed 6 different investor profiles. One of them they called was the mistimer. This is someone who retires shortly after retirement or right in that time frame. The market declines, so it's a bad timing. In other words, another one was the more conservative investor. Another one was profile investor that wanted to make sure their bills were paid. There were a number of other different profiles, 6 different ones, like I said, which kind of covers the gamut of all the types of different investors. And we've all heard the old 60-40 portfolio mixed, equities to bonds recommended. It can be a little higher, a little lower, but that's sort of the rule of thumb. And what they basically did on this white paper was assume you replaced the bond portion of the portfolio, the 40%, with annuities. They also compared variable annuities to fixed index annuities. And here's what was so amazing about this white paper. In all 6 investor profile scenarios, in every single scenario, if that investor replaced the bond portion of their portfolio, the 40% that they recommend, with fixed index annuities, the likelihood of success of not running out of money increased dramatically. Some of them were as high as 98 to 99% likelihood of success, which means it's almost certain if you put 40% of your portfolio in fixed index annuities instead of bonds, your likelihood of success of not running out of money is almost certain. And in every scenario, it was significantly higher. And this is part of the reason I'm so excited about index products, because we can nearly ensure you will not run out of money in retirement, which also typically means you can increase your withdrawal rate because of the guarantees. We don't participate in the downside. I have another gentleman who was age 70. We looked at putting him into a guaranteed lifetime income because he wanted to maximize his income for retirement. We were able to withdraw 8.1% annual return from his portfolio, guaranteed for the rest of his life. Well, that's double the 4% rule. So we were able to double his income and guarantee it would never run out. Retirement income guarantees, maximizing returns. The fallacy of if you want guarantees, you have to give up strong returns. It's not true. It's a fallacy because this is my strength. This is my forte. This is the products I deal with. This is my wheelhouse. It's not the typical advisor's wheelhouse. And you can kind of tell. And again, I'm not disparaging anyone here. I'm just saying I want you to help you understand which is the better fit for you. If you're talking to a financial person and their discussion is about primarily around returns, that's a person who's focused on taking on risk to maximize your nest egg. If their discussion is primarily about eliminating downside risk and maximizing income or maximizing distribution, minimizing taxes, that's a distribution specialist. Based on your stage in your life, what your goals are, or if you want to diversify, you have to ask yourself a simple question. Do you need an accumulation specialist or a distribution specialist? I taught a college certified financial literacy course for a couple of years. You know what the wealthy do? If you're still working and you're not retired and you have enough assets to work with, let's say a rule of thumb of about $200,000 in liquid assets or more total, you most likely should have both an accumulation specialist while you're still working and growing and a distribution specialist that can make sure to maximize your income for retirement when you do retire. As you move towards retirement or into retirement, the need for the distribution specialist increases. In many cases, then becomes the dominant need. You're not trying to grow your money anymore. You're just trying to maximize retirement income. So talking to an accumulation specialist is not probably going to give you the best results. Working with a distribution specialist like myself is what will give you the best results to maximize retirement income. If any of this interests you and you want more information, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Email me at Ferenc, F-E-R-E-N-C, no E on the end, F-E-R-E-N-C at yourpersonalbank.com, or call me 866-268-4422. Yes, you will reach me. Stay tuned next week for some more great information on the Your Personal Bank Show. And as long as it's on our money, in God we trust. Concerned about market risk? I'm Ferenc Toth, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. The S&P 500 valuations are higher than at any time ever recorded in stock market history. This includes 1929 and 1999. We all know what happened afterwards. It wasn't pretty. Elevated valuations increase risk to the downside. Annuities and Your Personal Bank offer unlimited upside with no downside market risk. Your principal is guaranteed. Contact Ferenc at yourpersonalbank.com to maximize returns, reduce market risk, increase liquidity, and reduce taxes.
Contact Ferenc at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests of this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Some products discussed may have limitations and not be available in all states.
I'm Ferenc Toth, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. This is the golden era of fixed assets. Annuities and guaranteed lifetime income are paying the best rates in over 40 years. If you looked at annuities over 2 years ago, the numbers have increased significantly. If you own an annuity over 2 years old, the new products can not only pay your penalty to switch, but are often guaranteed to outperform your current product. For more info, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. That's yourpersonalbank.com.